It's truly my honor to introduce to you Maharat Rori Neiss. She serves as the Director of Programming, Education, and Community Engagement at Base Abraham Congregation. She is one of only 5 women in this position in the entire world.
Thank you very much, and it's really such an honor to be with everybody here, and this is something that I never could have imagined while growing up, mostly because it didn't really exist until about 4 years ago. So I grew up in what would be classified as a very right-wing Orthodox home. I davened at an aguda, for those of you who know what that means. I have 3 brothers who all study in Kollel. So for a while, my husband would just joke that my parents had 4 kids who would just sit and learn all day. But the joke was on them because I'm the one who got a job out of it. So, when I was in college, there were a few friends who we decided to spend a Shabbat together. And we had done some weekend together through student government, and we thought it would be fun to spend another weekend together. And so I invited them over to my house in Brooklyn, New York. My father was away. He had decided to take my brother to Israel. It was Purim weekend, and Purim would be longer in Israel because, anyway. Not the point of the story. So I invited them over to my house, and we were going to spend Shabbat together. And all of them were much more what we would call modern Orthodox. And so Friday night, they said, we should go to shul. And I said, we don't do that around here. Women don't go to shul on Friday night. And they said, there's one right across the street. And I said, okay, but I'm telling you, this isn't really done. And so we went across the street. That was the synagogue where I had always been going. And we went, the women's section was upstairs, the men's section was downstairs. And it was sort of this U shape with this kind of big wall and a curtain on top, so you could sort of like peer down over the curtain if you wanted to see. And we went up to the men's section on Friday night. Sorry, the women's section on Friday night. And we opened the door, and the women's section was filled with men. Because women don't go to shul on Friday night, and so the men would go up there. And some of them wanted to have a little bit more of a personal prayer. Some of them were reading a book. Some of them were napping. And so I was really uncomfortable, and my friend said, "No, we're going to sit down, and we're gonna pray." And so we sat down. We got all these dirty looks from these men because we had come into their section. And, and so my friends kind of like sidle up to them, and they're sort of shifting down a little bit. And we went and we prayed, and it was a terrible experience. And so I went to my dad after he came back, and I said to my dad, I said, you have to go to the rabbi, and you have to tell him that he needs to make an announcement that if he doesn't want women to go into the men's section, men can't go into the women's section. And my dad said, well, why would women go into the men's section? And I said, you have to tell him he has to make this announcement that this should be the women's section. I had not, at that point, I had no qualms about having a separate space. I had no qualms about the fact that I couldn't see anything. That was not at all my complaint. I said, but you have to tell them that this is going to be our space. And so my dad spoke to a few people. He couldn't ask the rabbi to make such an announcement. He spoke to a few of the board members, and they came to a compromise. They said that the next time I would be home for the weekend, that I should let them know, and what they would do is they were going to lock the door of the women's section, and they were going to give me the key. And when I got to shul, I would find one of them, and I would take the key, and I could unlock the door and go in and lock the door behind me, and that way I could pray on Friday night. And I sort of thought, this doesn't quite sound like a good idea, but they're offering me a compromise. I guess I have to be fair. I don't know. And so I went and I did this. And so the next time I said, okay, I have to at least tell them I tried it. And so I went and I got the key from somebody. I unlocked the door. I went into this space. I locked the door behind me. And throughout the service, I would hear this sort of jostling of the door. And I had no idea who was trying. And I sort of joke, it's my very first protest that nobody knows I took. Because I assume everyone just thought that someone forgot to unlock the door. Nobody knew I was in there. And I had no idea if the people who were trying to get in were men or if they were women. And I realized that I was the person who had locked the door. And I went home and I thought, I don't ever want to be that person again. I don't ever want to be the person who's locking somebody else out of this space. And I didn't really know what that meant. I didn't really know what to do with that. But a few years later, when they announced that they were going to be starting an institution to train women for leadership positions in the Orthodox community, I should say that there had been women who were taking on inspirational leadership roles for years, and like others have mentioned, we all stand on the shoulders of all of these women. But there was a lack of recognition, there was a lack of formality. Nobody really knew how to become that person, and no one knew how to find that person when somebody became that person. And so I guess it was now about 5 or 6 years ago that Yeshivat Maharat was started. I promised some people I would explain what that is. And so they started it to basically say, we're going to formalize a curriculum so Orthodox women have a place that they know that they could go to get the training that's necessary to take on leadership roles within the Orthodox community. And we're going to tell the community that these women have been trained to do these roles. And so they started this program. They decided to give a different title. There's this general discomfort. I'll be very honest. If the group had jumped up and said, we're ordaining women to be rabbis, I wouldn't have signed up. It was not something I'd ever grown up with. I'd never grown up with female rabbis. It wasn't something that I was comfortable with. But when they said, we're going to give women this training, we're going to acknowledge that they have this capability, and we're going to give them a title that's unique to them, I said, okay, I'll try this out. And so we went through this training. It's really a parallel rabbinical training program with all of similar curriculum to other Orthodox seminary programs with a focus on Jewish law, pastoral counseling, texts, teachings. And throughout, I wasn't really sure quite where it was going to take me. I thought, this seems like a place I should be. And somewhere down the line, I realized this was my chance to open up the doors for other people. Because not just for women, although that's part of it, but really there's plenty of men who don't have the same access in the Jewish community either. To be able to stand up and lead services, somebody has to teach you how to do that. To be able to study something with the text. I had been in yeshiva education my whole life, and nobody had ever actually given me the text. I remember my halacha, my Jewish law class, was basically the teacher just wrote the laws on a piece of paper and then photocopied it and handed it out to us. And I thought, I want to know what the text says. I want to know what's in it, and I want to make sure that anyone who wants to can pick up this text and they can know what's in it also. And so I went through the program really with that focus. That's really, I think for me, access is just at the core of all that I do and all that I think so many of us do who know what it's like to not have been allowed access previously. And I'm also, like everyone here has mentioned, just so grateful to St. Louis for deciding that and Bay Save in particular, when they were looking for somebody and they said, we have a place for a woman. And they called Yeshivat Maharat and they said, okay, we're willing to talk about it. And it's hard for me in some ways because taking on that title and taking on that role, by definition, makes me scary to a lot of people. Makes a lot of people really uncomfortable. And that makes me uncomfortable because I like to think that I'm not really that scary. And at the same time, I know that had I not gone through that program, had I not taken on that title, that never would have given me the access to enable me to reach out to so many other people and give them the access to Judaism that they feel so passionate about. So I grapple with where that role sometimes takes me, but I'm so grateful to St. Louis as a community that has really embraced women in leadership roles, and really, I think, at least for me, not made it as scary as it seemed initially.